What's behind you? Is that real or is that like one of those fake? Yeah, that.
Green screen.
Oh, not good. I
Yeah,
know it
keeping it
well.
retro.
Yeah.
So, welcome to Dope Nostalgia. I want to thank you for being on the show today, and I'm really excited about your new project you're doing with your daughter, Kandle.
Hmm.
Family Curse. Now, would you describe this as a newer project, or has this been go on in the works for a long time?
Well, we've been a family cursed since the beginnings, since she was born.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a record. You know, we've always obviously she decided to get into music for whatever reason, and we never really worked together until this project. So it was a fun thing to do, independent of our own careers, kind of thing.
Now, how long had she been working in music up until this point? Since she was,
Uh yeah, a good 10 years anyway, since she was a teenager. So yeah.
and you guys just decided, hey, it's time to do this as a family thing. And how did you get the rest of the family involved? Because from what I understand from reading the bio, is that you have aunts and uncles and people who are also playing in the group. Is that correct?
They come and go. I mean, the recording project is essentially Candle and I, and a little contribution from Danny Michelle. Um, but my brother, who's a pretty good musician, played sax on some live shows and piano, and my niece Sarah, who's a musician too, uh, did some singing with us, and just sort of people coming in and out. And of course, the my other daughter Coral and my wife Janina are in the latest video. So, we make it a family thing.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll make sure that we share the links to the videos on all of our social media. And if you don't mind, we'll share a couple of clips of some of your songs you guys are doing. So
Yeah,
people get
absolutely.
people get a taste of it. So in the bio, you guys say that we make our music from experimenting with various audio scraps and acting on our emotions. What various audio scraps are in play here?
Well, it's more of an attitude, sort of like there's a song called Refrigerator Shrine. I mean, there's a town in the Joshua Tree National Park, the desert in California there, called Pioneer Town, and some other weird old sort of almost cowboy towns,
Mm.
and that kind of a vibe. Experimenting with slide guitar, so I was just playing around with some slide guitar playing and drumming, which I don't normally know how to do. And I
Yeah.
would come up with these grooves that I thought were kind of fun. And then I sent them basically to Candle, and she just sang over them. She just told me, give it a name and I'll sing on it. So I'd say something like, Cast the Curse or Desert Blues. Named a lot of them something blues, so that
Yeah.
she put on that attitude. And it kind of worked.
Pure folk artwork from found objects. That was another quote I read describing the project.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
I like that one too. So there's a bit of mystery I found to the band while I was doing some investigating on on the origins and whatnot. It makes delving into it more exciting for me as a listener. What will we expect from your stage show? Now I know right now it's a little bit wild to be I think you guys are starting to do some shows again, aren't you?
We've done a few streaming shows already, and we were just just before this what do they call it, a pandemic kind of took away the music industry. We were just starting to gear up for some shows in the summer and stuff, and we've done, I guess, 2 shows in Montreal and a show in Toronto. When we were sort of both out there, and they went over pretty good, so it was fun.
I noticed one of them was like the El Mocambo. Is that
Well, no, that didn't happen.
no, it didn't. Oh, okay.
The 440 band, the other band that I'm part of, we did that, but Candle couldn't make the trip,
Mm.
so we were supposed to do a Family Curse show there. I mean, the thing is with the live show, when it's live in front of people, not so much a stream show, because the stream show is kind of like it sounds; it just streams through,
Yeah.
because there's no audience to sort of interact with, and but when we do the live show, it's just like being in our kitchen and we're just sort of just riffing off each other. A lot of banter goes on.
When you're doing a with a stream show and there's no audience, does it feel like just being at a rehearsal almost, like a sound check, or
It sucks
yeah,
generally, But the last one we did was kind of fun, and I'm trying to remember who the heck it was for. I think it was the Windsor Blues Fest or something like. It was funny because we got to play all these blues festivals and stuff without being there, which is kind of weird. But so what I organized is we played to the bass and drum tracks, and I set it up that it was continuous, and then I faded in audience crowd cheering and stuff. It actually felt better.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like when you see a show and it's canned laughter or canned applause. It's, you don't know. After a couple seconds, you don't notice it and you just go with it. And it's like, yeah, yeah. Because even when you play a song and it ends like, you think you're doing a performance, like you're performing, and then silence at the end. Well, you're not really performing. You're jamming or you're rehearsing, So, and it's just like the first thing you say is like, you missed that fourth on the second chord, You don't do that when people are watching.
You kind of forget there's an audience there if there's not a reminder.
Yeah, exactly.
And then afterwards, you get to see all the feedback from the fans who've been streaming. Like, do they chat?
Yeah, there is that, and Kandle is way better at it than I am. But even while we're performing, sometimes you see people with their little comments, but you can't say anything because you're actually performing. Or if it's an after the fact thing, I still don't know how to do that. It's all new to me.
Yeah, I know it's definitely an odd time to be a performer right now. So there's a lot of learning in the process for a lot of people. Now, with the Mocambo, I think from what I understand, it's a very classic location in Canada for live music. Is that correct?
Well, the Mocambo was sort of, as far as Toronto goes, through this. Well, it started, I think, in the 40s, if not earlier. But in the 60s and 70s and 80s, it was sort of the place where bands like Elvis Costello first played there, Blondie first played there, The Damned, Tom Cochrane, lots of Canadian acts. I mean, it was sort of the place where you first got your feet wet if you were sort of heading somewhere. And of course, the Rolling Stones played there a few times as the Cockroaches, in a sort of a warm-up surprise show. So that was always on, like people were always on the lookout for when that might happen. And then it closed down. It just sort of got decrepit, I guess late in the 80s or maybe even later. And it shut down. And then a friend of mine named Mike Weckerly, who's one of the Dragons on Dragon's Den, I went to an auction to buy the neon sign, and I guess the buddy next to him said, "Why don't you just buy the club and reopen it?" So that's what he did.
No way.
Yeah. So it cost him a little more than the sign would have. And he was all set to reopen in April, and we were going to be part of that week of launching the reopening. And of course, then the pandemic happened. But now he's doing streaming shows there, and I tell you this, it's a first-class place now, and it's pays homage to what it used to be. There used to be 2 rooms, a basement room, which is kind of like a CBGB's, very cool, and then the upper showcase room, which is also really nice. But he's also, upgraded the sound first class, and it's actually designed as a broadcast thing. So in a weird way, he's kind of ahead of the curve in the sense that you can do really high quality streaming shows. And I think July Talks played there. A bunch of acts have already played there, and we did a show there as 5440, I guess about 2 weeks ago now. Smart
choice for him to set it up the way he did.
I mean, it's like, I don't think he's making money.
Yeah.
Very wealthy guy. And, I was with him and one of his friends, and his other friend had opened a golf course in the Maritimes, and another friend has a giant yacht. So it's just like, well, this is a better way to, at least he's supporting artists and helping music stay alive as much as he can, which is very, very hard to do now.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see him get involved. Absolutely. Kind of reminds me of, are you familiar with the old Sidetrack Cafe in Edmonton?
Yeah, I know of it, yeah.
When they redid it, they moved it to a new location, and I would say this was in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that move just didn't work for it. I guess the magic was gone, and it wasn't open very long.
Yeah, interesting how that can happen. Yeah, there's almost a feng shui to a certain place, especially when it gets some roots on it. We played the, if I got a funny story, we played at 5440. This is, I guess, early 2000s. We were in Liverpool and we were playing the Cavern Club, and we were so excited because the Cavern Club, as you know, is where the Beatles got their big start.
Yeah.
And, we were all excited, and then we were told, well, no, the real Cavern Club was down the block. This is sort of the imitation Cavern Club. It was like, oh, man.
Oh. Well, it's kind of a letdown, I guess, but I'm sure it was a great gig anyway. But
Yeah, it was interesting.
tell me about the induction of 5440 into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame in 2017.
Well,
Yeah.
you go through this ritual. They cut your wrists, and you got to drip a bunch of blood. And no, I mean, it's a nice, I guess, from our peers in the industry, I guess, acknowledging our contribution, giving us tip in the hat to us, like giving us a feather or stick in our cap. There is no hall that I'm aware of.
No physical hall to visit?
No physical hall, no robes to wear, no ceremonies. Just basically an excuse for an awesome party and people like you to get to talk about it, which is awesome.
It's a good party. It's all about the party. Did you guys ever see yourselves as labeled alternative? Because that label of a genre means many things, I find, especially in the 90s.
Well, we started in the 80s, just so you know. So
Yeah.
That word didn't exist. The
Right.
word that existed was underground music, believe it or not, because you basically played halls or some dingy clubs that nobody really knew about it unless you knew about it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
So that was called underground music, and then it became college music or university music, and then it became alternative music, and then it became whatever it became, so whatever.
I always felt it was like, it was a label for guitars that were grungy, in my opinion. That's all it was. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, the grunge thing happened well after we were on the scene.
That's true. That's true. I know that you guys did start way back in the 80s instead of the 90s, but I found that when I got to know you guys, it was definitely in the 90s with the releases you had then. Did you feel like the music you were doing fit through and went through the grunge era seamlessly? Or did you notice any kind of struggle with that type of music coming into the forefront?
Well, we weren't quite that way, but we fit alongside it fine. We played a lot of those bands. Depending on what you would call those bands. Same with the 80s. I mean, I guess alternative could be described as something that isn't necessarily, on the top of the rock charts or anything, or mainstream music in terms of whatever, like rock music. So the 80s, we didn't really get played on the radio until later in the 80s, and then in the 90s, we had sort of been established, and then the whole Nirvana thing came along, and a bunch of bands got inspired by that, and we played a lot. We played with Pearl Jam, we played with Soundgarden, we played with a lot of bands in those days.
Well, that's awesome. I understand that you went to Berkeley for music. Now, I find that like some real music heavyweights studied there. How many years were you at Berkeley?
So you're talking about the Berkeley in Boston, not the California, right?
Yes.
There's two. Yeah.
College of Music.
Exactly. I was there for 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I went, this isn't for me. And I dropped out pretty quickly. And then that's basically around the time Brad, bass player who I went to high school with, said, hey, there's this new thing called punk rock and underground music. And it's really happening here in Vancouver. You should come back. He wrote me a letter. I actually still have the letter. Come back and we can jump into this because it's a lot of fun. And I went, wow. Well, I was studying 8 hours a day in my little cubicle and trying to be a jazzoid guy and all that sort of stuff.
Is that what it was? Because I tried to go to Grant McEwen for music and it was the jazz. I couldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, at the time, this is like 1978. Music was pretty bad in in terms of, I mean, I wasn't really catching a whiff of sort of the new alternative stuff that was coming out of England or maybe New York. So, you know, it was the sort of Baroque music that was around was really indulgent and bad. So jazz was the natural sort of place to go if you wanted to stay a music fan, or unless you wanted to be a nostalgist. So anyway, the short story is that I remember I had a really good teacher. You had all these different courses that you would take, and I had a personal teacher, and I was a first year, and I went into my class, and another student went out, and then the teacher said to me, yeah, see that guy, he's like one of the best students I've ever had in years. And I went, okay, you know, I'm going to ask you this question about that guy that was one of the best students you've ever had in years, because clearly that's not me. What is he going to end up doing? Oh, well, he'll either be a teacher at a high school. If he's really lucky, he can get a part-time job in an orchestra pit. And I went, fuck me, man. I am not doing that. So then I got the letter from Brad. It's like, get out of there. Come on, let's start a band. I went, okay. Yeah, I got to go to 4 years of college just so I can be a teacher. No, thanks. So that was the deal there.
Understandably so. Now you guys played your first show together, and John Lennon died that day.
Yeah, that was it was a profound. I remember distinctly. So the show was I think it was a Monday or Tuesday. My brother was in a cover band out in the suburb of Vancouver called Coquitlam, I think it was, and they had the open mic Monday or Tuesday, right? So if you had something you wanted to showcase, they would give you a half hour. So I arranged that we would play our first show. That was, you know, we hadn't played anywhere in front of anybody. So we were there. And so we were all meeting there separately because we were living in different parts of the city. And I was driving in my sister's old station wagon, and I heard it on the radio, and I was just like, oh. I just felt, you know, a lot of emotions, and I can still feel it today. I mean, John Lennon meant a lot of different things to a lot of different people. You know, and to me, he was one of the real people, one of the ones that you look to, like, that changed the course of culture in so many ways. And his attitude was always, you know, I know he was regarded as an asshole and, you know, a lot of attitude issues, but he always spoke his mind, and he wrote a hell of a lot of great tunes. So I wasn't really into the Devil Fantasy album that had just come out, by the way. But so when we got on the stage and we sort of looked at each other, it just felt like, you know, like one of those weird old war movies where the Sarge just died and we got to pick up and you know, continue the battle for him kind of deal. So it just felt really, I don't know, meaningful and profound to play our 6 songs. That there. So, but in actual fact, we were just, and the gig that we had as 5440, I mean, we would call ourselves 5440, but it wasn't announced, was the New Year's Eve following. So that John Lennon died on December 8th. And then our show, where we had a little poster and everything, was New Year's Eve, 1980 in the Smile and Buddha Cabaret.
You still got the poster?
No. There's a poster from a few gigs after that, kicking around, but not that one.
What kind of memorabilia have you kept from over the last few years?
I've got, well, there's photos kicking around, obviously, that have been scanned and stuff like that. But I've got about 4 or 5 giant garbage bags of moldy, smelly T-shirts. I've got just about every T-shirt we ever made. Now, we used to make our own. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh.
Yeah, see, you haven't been around as long as I have. There was a Much Music special on us and how we would make our own T-shirts with silk screening and everything like that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of those rejects, actually, where they got smudged and so I got garbage bags full of T-shirts right through the 80s and 90s, and then after the 2000s, I kind of gave up collecting them all. But yeah.
What was your favorite album you released in the 90s?
Oh, that'd be Smile and Buddha Cabaret for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What album track would you wish would have been a single, like a deep cut that was your favorite?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Well, there was a song on the album after Smile and Buddha Cabaret, on the album Trusted by Millions, that I thought that the song Stick to Millie
Mm-hmm.
was going to be a single. I was, and I was pretty good, as Dave Genn says, I would predict what the single would be about half the time. In other words, that song is going to get on the radio. And he goes, that's a pretty good record. That's better than an A&R guy. I kind of knew how to sense that this song was clicking, because we used to always test these things out live, or even when we were making it, it just seemed to have a wind behind its back. So I remember we were recording the album, and Stick to Millie, still a great song, still a powerful rock song, and it still could have been a single. And we went, Stephen Drake did it, and a guy, what's his name, Bob Ludwig, famous mastering engineer out of Portland, Maine. He's mastered all the big records. We flew to Portland, Maine to get it mastered, and the same time the Hip were there, because Stephen Drake, who produced us, mixed the Hip, so we were doing a 2-for-1 kind of deal. So I was hanging out with those guys, listening to their record get mastered, which sounded awesome. I think it was Trouble at the Hen House, and was the one with Head by Century. I just remember that, whatever that album is. And then we had ours done, and the A&R guy was there, and we were flying on the back home, up to Toronto to do some meetings. Then I was going to go on to Vancouver, and the A&R guy was very, very excited about the album. And I said, Stick to Millie should be the first single. He said, yeah, I do. And they said, what's it about? And I said, well, it's about abortion. It's like, the woman's right to choose, and how laws can whatever. And he freaked out, being a Catholic, and basically it didn't get released as a single.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. I mean, I suppose he could dispute that, but that's what happened. He definitely pushed for other songs, and that was a very successful album, but that never even saw the light of day, that record, or that song. So I kind of went, but whatever. That's rock and roll, baby.
That's true. Now, with Hootie and the Blowfish covering your song I Go Blind, did that enable you guys to do a lot more with your own music, financially especially?
Well, it in the sense that financially it was very rewarding. So we actually got a studio out of it that we had in Granville Island for a while, and then sort of burst that into our own homes after that. So in that sense, yes. And it was very successful for them, but no, people still don't know that it's our song. That's kind of,
isn't that wild?
Yeah, I mean, I remember when we had that song released, and when we were signed to Warner Brothers down in Los Angeles, and the A&R guy was playing it for the president of Warner's, a guy named Lenny Waronker, and I Go Blind came on, and I just felt like, wow, that's pretty cool. That sounds actually really good. But they didn't want to release it as a single. They released Baby Ran, I Wanna Know instead. And then I Go Blind became a fan favorite inadvertently, and then they sort of begrudgingly released it as a single, and without any kick on it. So, it's a testament to a good song, I think.
Absolutely. It's good to see you guys. When I see you live, and the last time I think was when you played Edmonton at our K-Days Festival 2 years ago, I want to say.
All right, tell me what that was.
Okay, it was the summer show, outdoor show.
Who was on the bill?
It was different bands nightly. You guys were the only band in that evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was the fair. Right. The fair.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I can put it together.
It's really cool to see you guys live, especially when you realize all the songs come back to you, right? Like that. You're just like, yes, that was a 5440 classic. So you realize how many hits you guys had on the radio. Quite a few. Have you released any or reissued any of your music on vinyl?
There was a reissue of the Dear Dear album that was kicking around for a while. I think wasn't us that released it because it was a Sony record, but somebody licensed the vinyl rights from Sony, and we're talking about it. You know, in the States, they're having a 30 or 35-year rights reversion of masters by law. So we've applied for our first 3 records, which were signed, you know, to Warner's in the States to come back to us. All the records we did, well, not all the records, but the 5 records we did after that were with Sony Music in Canada. And they have those masters in perpetuity unless the Canadian law can change where the artists get them back. So short answer is, I don't know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I know. How are you doing for time? I don't want to take up too much of your time if you're in a hurry. I just have a couple more questions.
Pandemic on, and there's no gigs to be had. So yeah, I think I'm okay for a few more minutes.
Okay. Okay. What was your favorite music video to make?
You know, it's gonna sound cliche and whatever, but it was definitely Ocean Pearl.
That's my favorite song of yours.
Yeah,
loved it.
That's our most successful song and most successful video.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it because of that, you know, because we did a lot of videos and there's a lot of weird experiences, and mostly these videos were some director's vision. I mean, we come from those days, you know, in the golden era of the 80s and 90s of videos when the budgets were phenomenally higher than the making of the records. Nowadays, you know, I mean, that you're going to hopefully play some of Family Curse videos, which are fun and great. But I did mostly on an iPhone in front of a green screen.
Nice.
Cost of nothing, zero.
Good.
We're talking, you know, a lot of money. So Ocean Pearl was the 3rd video released on the Smile and Buddha record. All the videos we did 4, director by the name of Jeff Weinrich out of Calgary. Brilliant guy. He did a lot of Jan Arden stuff, some other acts, I guess. He did a video called Blame Your Parents, which is stunning, which is just so original and great, which we did in an abandoned insane asylum outside of Vancouver. But when it came down to Ocean Pearl, you know, the record company said, well, you know, you kind of blew all your budget on Assaholic, which was done in Calgary too. And Blame Your Parents and Ocean Pearl was like, well, we can only give you, you know, I think it was about 30 grand, where the other one's well over 100 grand. I mean, this is
Still, that's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? You know,
Yeah.
the standard that minimum 100 grand a video for your first song and maybe your second, and then they kind of went, well, if it's not selling enough, you're kind of done.
But in the end, who pays for that? Does the band have? Is it like a loan?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I'm sure you understand that and explained that already.
Yeah.
It's extortion, basically. But Jeff had this really cool idea, which was essentially to take a skeleton crew and some locals, and we fly down to Las Vegas, and we rent this old 60s bus. I mean, it's kind of like what you see, and we do a road trip. And so rather than go to a warehouse and, you know, all these people in makeup and all this stuff and a set, and, you know, it's like you don't even know who these people are. And, you know, you can see all this money go out the window. And you're supposed to stand in a cold warehouse in a puddle and stomp your feet and pretend you're cool. It's like, fuck. So this sounded like fun. And it absolutely was hilariously fun. It was one of the most memorable times of our band. There's probably a dozen of those, and this definitely stands up there. So it was about 10 or 12 of us that, you know, we're in this 1963 vintage bus with, you know, a camera crew and a couple of other skeleton crew. And we also had a local who was a cowboy poet named Rod McEwen or something like that. And, you know, Vietnam vet and just the coolest guy. And he kind of just was our shaman for the whole trip. So we went through Joshua Tree, we went through Yuma, we went through all these places, and it was a long trip to Las Vegas. So we started in a Las Vegas strip and ended the video in LA, going down Sunset Strip.
Nice.
And just all the events and weird things that happened aside from making the video. It was just a really good time. So that's why that video kind of works. There's a lot of funny stories about it.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, I mean, just the idea of making a music video sounds extremely fun to me, but I imagine some of the shoots are not as easy as others.
Yeah.
Some of them are probably pretty difficult.
I mean, it depends. Like I said, the stuff I did with The Family Curse was hilariously fun and has been hilariously fun because we just dress up and be goofy in front of a green screen, and then I find something to put behind it and go, that's fun. And, but yeah, some of those videos in the other days is like lots of time setting up for the lighting and the camera and the makeup and getting it just so and doing it 5 times. And, you know, and then it gets all put together and it is what it is. It looks good, I guess, as far as what it was in those days. I mean, I think some of the videos now that you see, you know, especially some like The Weeknd or something like that, I think those budgets are like $1 million. Something like that. It's like they're movies.
Exactly. What kind of good memories do you have of performing at Much Music and other like show appearances that you've had?
You mean like at Much Music, like on TV at Much Music?
Yeah. How was that process?
Well, playing live at Much Music, I suppose we did about 3 or 4 times. I know we did the Much Music Awards. I think we closed it. We were supposed to open it, and Denise Dolan was running Much Music at that point, and she called and said, Brian Adams says he wants to open it, so you're closing it. It's like, okay. Guess that's the way it is. But we won the award that year for Best Video for Sheila. So that was a good consolation for not opening. But anyway, it's good.
Who have you met in the business that's taught you the most or that you're most excited to meet?
Well, you get little bits of everything from everybody. People that maybe you never heard of, to, you know, meeting Ronnie Wood was pretty special, but then that's a Rolling Stone, and then meeting all the Stones and hanging out for a bit with those guys was kind of like threw me right back to being a little kid again, you know, meeting heroes, and I was just like couldn't get the grin off my face. It was the weirdest thing. But you know, I think mostly, believe it or not, we've been the various producers we worked with in the 80s and 90s who always had some sort of gem or kernel of a jewel of insight that would stick with us or me, you know. Like I remember Don Smith, you know, saying that the song just has to feel good, you know, and he would play examples of songs that the timing would drift or the tuning was a little bit weird or this and that, but it was a hit and because it felt good. And he goes, that's the key here. And, oh yeah, that's so true, you know, because I've run into a lot of people who get really anal about a bar being a little bit off or this or that, and like no one can tell. But once you start looking, you'll find those problems, right? And they're not even problems.
It's true.
It's like it's a crutch to lean on a grid or something like that. So, you know, other things like that just validate, I guess, what you already knew without knowing, without really defining it.
There's a lot of huge songs from the history of music that, if you really wanted to analyze, have mistakes in the recordings, if you really wanted to find them, right?
Yeah,
so,
like you know, like Tracy Chapman's "You Got a Fast Car," whatever that's called. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, Fast Car.
Yeah, yeah. If you listen to that, the tempo changes quite a bit throughout it, you know, and it's got some weird guitar problems and stuff like, but it just feels great. And it's got a great, and that was one of the ones to use. The other one was, I think, Out on a Weekend by Neil Young, where it's just so simple and feels so good. And you're just like, wow, yeah, exactly.
You just got right into it.
Yeah.
Is there any new tech out there that you are not interested in, you just refuse to use? Like, nope, not for me.
Depends what you mean by tech. I just,
Like social media
yeah,
software, or even just recording software, anything out there that you're like, no, I'm good.
yeah, most of it. Most of it. I mean, I do have Instagram mostly to keep track of what my kids are up to.
Mhm.
And then Facebook, I'm collecting. I've got so many friends who I've never met, and that's a weird concept to me, but I'm kind of enjoying it.
Mhm.
And Twitter, I don't even know, I can't fathom how to use it, and and that's okay with me, I guess. And then as far as technology, well, I don't know, no real opinion, I guess.
Mhm. Did you guys use analog back in your earlier recordings? Because
Awesome.
I still have recording engineer teachers who still swear by it. When we were taking digital recording classes, they still were teaching us analog because they said you still need to know this. It's
Yeah,
very
for sure.
important.
Yeah, well, basically all our records that went platinum and gold, which is I think 5 or 6, and everything through the 80s and 90s, that's all there was analog. There
Mhm.
was no digital, you know.
Yeah.
So like it's what you had to do. I mean,
Mhm.
but now we've done recordings like where we try to get into analog. It's just more expensive. It's really expensive now. But
Mm.
we might mix down to a 1/2 inch tape, that kind of thing, and try to make some vinyl and all that to keep that experience alive.
Mm. Okay. Well, what can listeners look forward to with the new release with the Family Curse?
Um, well, it's kind of a fun rock and roll bluesy vibe. It sounds like a road trip to me, that it's great for listening to in the car. So
Fantastic. All right, I can't wait to share it with everybody.
go
A
ahead.
Family Curse. I'll get everyone all the links. I'll get you guys set up with so
Yeah,
everyone can check it out,
appreciate
and
it.
we'll share it on our social media, of course, as well.
Mhm.
When this airs, I'll make sure to tag you guys in it so that you'll know when it's coming out.
Yeah, that's good news.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. How's Edmonton doing anyways? What's going on over there?
In general, things are all right. I think pretty much like everywhere else. Our COVID numbers aren't the best compared to some Canadian cities.
Mm,
Edmonton's kind of double Calgary.
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
we're at about like 850 active cases right now.
Is that what do they attribute that to?
Gatherings, public gatherings, people not wanting to wear masks. Things. It's mostly community spread.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think this. I'm not sure. I know there's some people that have been having parties and stuff like that, which is probably not smart. But I don't know about blaming young people because they don't seem to think they're going to get really sick.
Hmm.
Is the right thing to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, a lot of young people. I mean, when I'm talking young, I'm basically saying anybody younger than me, which is most of the people. But they're out there working, right? They're
Hmm.
working at restaurants, grocery stores, stuff like that. So cut
Somebody
them
has to do it.
some slack, man. You got to. Yeah.
And they got to let off steam just like anyone else because their jobs aren't easy right now.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's
Yeah.
just a thing.
How's Kelowna doing?
Well, we're house sitting for a friend of ours who's a university professor who's he's got a cat that he doesn't want to put in a kennel. So it's all right. He
Yeah.
went swimming yesterday, so it's one of the few places in Canada that in late September, even early October, that you can still swim outside in the lakes.
Oh, it must be amazing.
Yeah, it's quite nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much once again. I can't wait
Oh,
to share this with everybody. So it'll probably still be